This is definitely the best way to build custom brake lines. End of story. So to be clear, this video encompasses building brake lines for a custom or aftermarket application. This uses a 37-degree flare, which is not used in production modern cars. So if you're trying to repair your rusted brake lines on your 2000 Chevy Tahoe or something of the like, this is not the video you want to watch unless you're building a custom car or a hot rod. Aviation uses a lot of this technology as well. This has been used for decades and decades. This is an excellent way to build aftermarket brake lines, but yeah, not for your average everyday driver car. First, start off with some coiled stainless brake tubing. Yes, these are stainless steel lines. So that means they are extremely strong, hard to work with, and will definitely never rust. So you have coiled brake tubing, kind of comes in a nice big, slinky, kind of like this. You're gonna need the tools to flare and build the brake lines to your car. So let's go over what we use. If your hands are worn out and you want the easy way out, you can buy this thing. This is a brake tubing straightener. I like to do it by hand like this, where you just uncoil it manually with your thumbs, but
me as well.
There is an easier way. Pretty much you take the tubing and you set it in these wheels, and you just pull it through. And admittedly, this thing's cool. It clamps down for 3/16 tubing. Link down below in the description for this thing. So that's a great way to straighten the tubing. That is flat out amazing.
What's that called again?
Flat out amazing. Yeah. So let's just go over the tools I like to use when I'm doing one of these jobs. We've established the uncoiler is actually super cool and useful, so not a waste of money actually. So this is one way of giving yourself a break in a line. More or less you put the line in this little thing that goes from 3/16 to 3/8 inch of a line. Pretty much put it in there and squeeze. A little hard to do, a little hard to predict your angles and where it's gonna fall. So this is not necessarily a tool I use super often, but it is useful if you're doing a pretty big line. This is made by Titan Tools. The part number on this one is 51503. It's 1/8 inch, 3/16 and 1/4 inch line. I like this because it's really small. When you're working in a tight space or you're underneath a car, you can maneuver your line easily, and it makes a really nice tight radius on the line. So this operates in a pretty standard fashion. You stick it in the middle one because we're using 3/16, which is the middle of the road. You align this foot so it's like 90-degree break there, and then you just simply push on them together, and this is a great tool for bending brake tubing. I like this one. This is its much bigger and clunkier cousin that does bigger line. So this will take you anywhere from 3/16 up to 3/8 inch if you're doing aluminum tubing, and this will do up to a 180-degree radius. So this is nice, whereas this is good for 90-degree. If you want to go full 180-degree sweep, that's what you want this one for. Put it in there, and you pretty much just pull this handle, sweeps it down there. The hardest to use and also the cheapest tool, but it does work. As you can imagine, very simple in its operation. It's completely manual, so all you have to do is more or less take your tubing, lock it on, lock it in there. You can hold it with the palm of your hand, and you just use the other palm of your hand, and you push the tubing around this bend to make your radius. This will go anywhere from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, or above beyond if you really want to overlap. But this is best reserved for like mild steel or NICOP lines, because with stainless it is pretty hard to get the stainless to stay in the groove without like cutting up your hand or injuring yourself, being that this is such a hard tubing to bend. Anyway, those are the bending tools I like to use. Let's move on to the flaring tools. Maybe you're working on your project on a nice weekend and you go down to your local parts store, decide to rent yourself a tool. The guy at the parts counter says, "Oh, brake tool, yeah, you got it. You can flare your lines with this." Well, unfortunately, your $19.99 parts store special tool, not really gonna work super great for stainless lines. It's not a good idea to use a standard inverted flare fitting because the stainless will not be able to seal properly on a 45-degree seat. If this is pretty standard, if you're using steel tubing, zinc-plated tubing, NICOP tubing, etc. So you think you'll upgrade and you'll go to the next best thing. You're gonna get a hydraulic crimping set from also your local parts store. This here is a Mastercool hydraulic flaring tool. This also does double flaring in 45-degree seats, and you can do 37-degree flares with this tool. However, still not the right thing. These dies, they're great for a 45-degree inverted flare. if you're doing standard brake tubing, this is a good set. I like the way this works. You have dies here that hold the brake tubing in place, while this hydraulic piston actuates the flaring tool to press up into the tubing, and then the tubing bends into that seat there. The problem with this set is it's not strong enough to hold the stainless line in place while that flare is made. Fortunately, and unfortunately, depends which way you look at it, stainless is pretty difficult to work with and needs a different kind of tool. So this is good for NICOP and regular brake line tubing, such as mild steel brake line, but not the end all. Instead, what you want to use is a tool like this. Imperial Eastman is what we have here, and this is the best way to make a 37-degree flare. Made in the USA in Chicago. So this, as far as I know, and as far as what I've used, this is the best way to do a 37-degree flare. Once you're done with the flare, there's one more tool. This is made by SureSeat. This is a line lapper, and this is what you use. Once you have the flare done, you find the tubing size that you're using. So we're gonna be doing 3/16. So this is actually the part that clamps in on the tubing and holds it in place. So what this does is it polishes your final flare so it has no burrs or anything like that. This is a honing tool. Now let's talk about the fittings themselves, because there are lots. There are lots. This is just a small selection of what is available in the automotive aftermarket. So what I like to use, stainless or zinc fittings for stainless tubing. This is called a bulkhead T. More or less, this is designed to fit within a mounting tab. So you would take something like that, and then you would run a nut down the shaft and it holds it in place. Anyway, that's irrelevant. This is a 3AN. So once you have your flare done on this line, to actually make it seat to this fitting, use what's called a tube nut. This is a stainless tube nut, 3AN. So let's go ahead and make a fitting here. Oh, and then one last thing. And always make sure to drop your parts on the floor no less than 3 times throughout the project. That'll really make sure that they're hardened in nicely for your use. One last thing. This is included in that double flare set from the parts store, but really this is just a deburring tool. This is a great little piece because anytime you use a tubing cutter, like this rigid tubing cutter that we like to use here, this will definitely leave a slight burr on the inside. As the pipe crushes in, you're always gonna get burr. So now that we have our tools set out, got our tubing straightened here, let's go ahead and make the flare. First things first, you're gonna take the tool, chamfer the end of your tubing just like this. Deburring it. Don't forget to check the links down below for all these tools. Yep, that is the important part. We'll make your job easy. You already have enough work to do on your car. Just click the link below, you'll get everything you need for this project. So make sure to install your fittings before you do it so you don't have to cut them off and redo everything, because that will guarantee to happen to you at least once. Yep. Somebody will walk in the garage, go, hey, I've got a question for you. And then suddenly, bam, your focus is gone and you're drinking green tea talking about random things. The other 2 tools you'll need for this are a 3/4 inch wrench. This is for the Imperial Eastman tool. And a decent crescent wrench. I personally like the Snap-on variety, but any will do. So first, you go ahead and loosen up your block here. This is what clamps the line in place for the different fixtures to crimp down on the line. You're gonna use the smallest hole here, which is a 3/16. Try to get that nice and locked and loaded in there. And you can just go ahead and run it down, tighten it up by hand a little bit. And just kind of get that more flushed up with the block there and just tighten that by hand. And we'll get it in place, and then I'll go ahead and slide this in here. That's the first step. This is the first step. And then make sure that this cone fits over the tubing. In this case, it does, it clears. So there you go. You know that you don't have too much sticking out. You're gonna take your 3/4 inch wrench here, just tighten down this end fitting. And then take this collar here. I'm going to tighten that down because this is actually adjusting the height of this tool, and it's pushing it down into the brake tubing. Get it nice and snug. It doesn't have to be super tight. This is the reaming tool stage. So go ahead and tighten it up, and as you go, you'll feel it get easier to turn. Just keep twisting this handle and then tighten it up a little bit more. You're chamfering the tubing so it doesn't crack when you flare it. Pull that tool off. And now you can see, if you get real close up on that, you can see there's a nice seat to that line. There's a nice cut inside of it. So that deburrs and chamfers your tubing. So that's the first step. Once you're done with that, you grab your wrench again. Go ahead and loosen that nut on the end of the tool to loosen up the line position in the block. So now the line is loose. Next, you want to go ahead and take this tool, slide it over the block, and here you have your height adjustment. So this rotates, is on a pivot there. You see it kind of move side to side. So set it to the shorter variant. This essentially limits the cone to a certain point from inserting farther into the tube. And then once you have that height set, push the tubing so it's firmly seated against the bottom of the cone inside of the block. And then go ahead and tighten the tubing down inside of the block using a 3/4 inch wrench at the bolt at the end of it. Okay, get that nice and snug. Doesn't have to be anything super crazy, but definitely nice and tight. Then go ahead and back this nut out here on this tool. Move this block out of the way. And then you'll see now you have some resistance there. Go ahead and then tighten down the tool. And as you tighten it down, it will push out the tubing in the cone seat, 37-degree seat that you need for your tube nut to seal up to your fitting. And you feel it get nice and tight. What you do is you lift up next on this part. And so what this will do when you lift this collar up, it'll prevent the cone from extending further into the tube, but the cone will still rotate. This is awesome because it allows you more or less polish the seat of your flare, make sure there's no burrs, and it's a nice concentric seat without any sort of distortion to it. So it's out of the hole, it kind of stays up, but you can load the wrench in such a way on the shaft that it holds it up as you go. So if you like kind of push against the edge of the wrench, it'll kind of cause it to not be square. Anyways, go ahead and go around a couple times. There you go. Keep going around until you get back into that groove and you lock the pin back down. This is how you remove the tool. So once the pin's locked down, then go ahead, loosen the fitting, back it off, pull that off, 3/4 inch wrench, loosen the bolt at the end of the clamping block. There you go. And this is the critical step here to get this out because it won't fit. You won't be able to get it out, but this part at the end rotates. So back up the nut and then just simply push down on that. The pin rotates out, these slide apart. Voila, you have your fitting nut. And now the last step here is this polishing block we had talked about earlier. So you take your newly formed seat, you place it in these plastic blocks here, slide it inside of this thingamabob. You can see it's a nice seat, but this just ensures that you have a perfect seat. So you take it in there, and now that that's in there, you just more or less just sit here and rotate this around for a little while. Push out these blocks here are nice. They're non-marring plastic, so you can use this on any kind of tubing. Just a plastic insert here. Good to go. So once that's done, you've got your perfect little 37-degree flare. Got a nice tube nut and seat. So that goes in there, this slides in, this pushes down on the flare as the nut tightens to make sure that that stays firmly seated against your fitting. Your tube nut goes here. You have your 3AN male part to connect to. Slide that in there. Tighten down your tube nut. You use your appropriate wrenches, and there you go. That is by far the easiest way to almost guarantee that you'll have no leaks. This has been a tech tip with Aaron. Anyway, hopefully that was helpful. As good as it gets.
Good as it gets.
It's as good as it gets.
It really is as good as it gets.